for someone else to use. Well, when you're in survival mode, you're looking for a solution for yourself.
Hmm.
You're looking for a way to make money right now. So it gets rid of that creative element, which allows you to actually solve a problem for an audience. If your whole goal is making money to pay the rent this month, then you're not going to be able to create on the same level as someone who doesn't have to worry about how their bills are being paid because money's coming in, because that person has so much time to think about how can I bring abundance to others? How can I solve problems for others? If you're trying to solve your own problem, you just can't create on the same level.
Hmm. I agree with that 100%. I think when it comes to success and the way that a lot of people think about money, first of all, this country is very broken because the fact that we were taught in the American education system not to talk about money ever. Okay, that's the first ideological fallacy inside the US education system. That's number one. Number two, we are taught in the American education system to not create, but to be slaves to the matrix. We're taught to be slaves. So therefore, they do everything in their power to drive out creativity out of the young generation. We have never seen a generation until Gen Z and Gen Alpha that is creating businesses with the implementation of AI like never before. This is literally history repeating itself again. Because if you think about it, in the early 1900s, America had the Industrial Revolution. So, how is this any different than the Industrial Revolution that happened almost 100 years ago? This is no different. Now, obviously, AI is a little bit more of a different story because it will be replacing humans. However, I tell everyone if you don't know how to use AI and use it effectively to enhance your job, not reduce your capabilities, then you're kind of out of time. You will be out of time by 2030.
Yeah, I think I even wrote in an article a couple of weeks ago. I said, you don't have to worry about AI replacing your job yet. You have to worry about someone who knows how to use AI replacing your job.
Hmm.
And if you walk into a grocery store or a 7-Eleven, sorry, I I don't mean 7-Eleven, the people that we are actively trying to create a partnership with. I didn't mean that. If you walk into a convenience store and you see someone sitting on their butt and looking at their phone, your job's going to be replaced. Like, that's it. If you look at videos of people in manufacturing and someone sitting there looking on their phone with one hand while they're putting something in a basket in another hand, your job's going to be replaced by robotics and AI pretty fast. But you're exactly right in that, I even tried to explain to my mom years ago before she passed away, when she would tell me, my mom never believed in me and the path that I was on to be an entrepreneur, which is funny because I always made more income than she had ever obtained in her life. But she was always trying to give me financial advice. And one day I explained to her, I was like, Mom, you need to understand, like, your generation and the generation before, y'all created the roads, you created the cars, you created the buildings, you created the computers. We're the ones that are creating the jobs on the computers. And then I even told her, I said, and then my next generation will use the software, my daughter's generation will use the software that I'm creating to create jobs for themselves. So we're doing the exact same thing. We're just doing it on cell phones. There's no difference at all.
No. No, and I think when it comes to, I think the older generation has become extremely bitter because they're talking about potential of the fact that they didn't have the allocable resources that my generation now does. It's like, dude, you're the one who created this. Like, don't get bitter because you created software.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And then on
It's
top of
funny how,
that, go
like, we
ahead.
have we have baby boomers who are pretty much pissed off at us because they had to go out and work jobs that they hated in order to survive. And now we're at this point to where we can literally do whatever we want, do something we love, follow a passion. You know, the flip side of that is we live in a world where money's not worth the same thing that it was worth. And that's the thing that I think a lot of entrepreneurs miss is a lot of people will try and follow a passion, but sometimes you have to do something that's not your passion in order to make revenue. And even on Monday, when I was talking to this girl, I was telling her that if someone is trying to start a job or trying to start their own business, then the quickest way to making revenue is to go out and sell a product or a service. You know, I was telling her, even if you have to do roofing sales, you might not necessarily want to climb on a roof, but there aren't many higher paying sales jobs right out there on the market available to everyone besides roofing. So, you know, I was telling her, if your goal is to start a business, then start learning how to sell products and services that would help a business owner start their business.
I agree with that.
And you know, that's even what we sell through Smarter, and we have a really awesome affiliate program in place. So not only are you making substantial revenue by selling products and services that can help a business grow, you're also learning about multiple businesses while you're out there selling those products because you're actively helping other businesses build their own brand. What better education can you get for yourself if you're trying to build your own brand?
100%. Let me tell you something. The art of sales is not taught in school. And it's simply, I look at sales like this, is your ability to communicate effectively. That's it. Now, because of the screens that we possessed, they're trying to not educate how my generation how to communicate simply. It's that simple. So they don't want my generation to communicate at all. So they'll put the screens in front of us so we don't have to communicate to one another. And then you have mental health crises such as our Gen Z having the highest rate of suicidal thoughts, depression, anxiety than ever beforehand in human history. And you wonder why that is, right? Sales is
Right.
not hard. It's simply just having an open and honest conversation about a problem and providing a solution. That's it.
Yeah, when someone tells me that they're not interested in sales, I'm like, oh, you're not interested in helping people? Because all sales is I always ask people, what's the definition of an expert? An expert is someone who knows more than the person they're talking to about any given topic. So you
Right.
don't have to be 100% fluent in a product or a service in order to be an expert of that product or service. So if you dislike sales, then that means you dislike helping people solve their problems, because all you're doing is you are educating someone on, I have a solution to your problem. And since you are being the one that's educating that person, then you're being rewarded through a commission. And that's it.
Yeah, I agree. I personally think that sales should be, I think in general, I think when it comes to education, I think business acumen alone should be taught in schools. I don't know why it's not being taught. Like, I mean, I know that they probably don't even teach people how to write a check anymore. Let's start there. And then, or how to file taxes, how to start a business, how to identify a need in the market to provide a solution and start your own businesses. Listen, I'm going to say this very simply. The tax department of the United States does not reward W-4 employees, period. It doesn't. It rewards the creators that create companies because then you
Right.
get to write off just about everything you own. A car, your home, rent, office supplies, computers, stuff like that. You can't do that if you're a W-4 employee, period.
Right. Yeah, I was telling my IT guy just last week because he just got out of school and this is his first real job working with me. And you know, he's a contractor. He works on our equipment, and then I have him doing IT services on my customers as well. But I was telling him to start an LLC, and he was asking how to start an LLC and why he should start an LLC. And I said, a person who is an employee makes money and they get taxed, and then they can spend whatever's left. A business makes money spends whatever they want, and then they get taxed on whatever's left. So
Hmm.
there's this flip, and you're exactly right. Like it's funny how we're having this conversation because it mirrors, and Sarah, it just shows how connected that we truly are, that we were talking about it in the last couple of days. Like I'm literally having this exact same conversation with you that I've had with a few people in the last week. And I was just the other day, my partner Tom, who connected me with the big capital group, we were talking about, John D. Rockefeller basically created the modern day school system that everybody is in. And
It's
he
true.
created it to turn kids into employees at his factories. So he
Yeah,
took out
they're
all
called
their
slaves.
creativity and he taught them how to shut up and listen to a boss for 8 hours a day.
Yep.
And so for the last 120 years or so, we've literally been following the indoctrination of one person's idea who built that idea into society to have people work in factories for him.
I
And
could go a little bit deeper
120
into conspiracy theories too. I've been down this rabbit hole for a couple weeks now. How about the fact that no major financial institution is owned other than the Rothschilds? How is it possible that a family has accumulated $500 trillion of wealth over, a 200 years time span, whatever the case may be, right? So you can't honestly tell me that these people are not in control of modern day society, and then on top of that, you can't deny the fact that the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, and all the other major 13 families are not controlling our education system. I just found out that there's another family that is owned the McGraw-Hill uh, education system, which McGraw-Hill makes all of the public education textbooks,
Mhm.
and they're a Zionist corporation. You cannot honestly tell me that we were indoctrinated to become slaves, period. And then you're leaving out crucial facts of history outside of US textbooks. So the indoctrination starts at preschool level.
You you have to you have to be willing. What we're talking about right now is the reason why so many people struggle in their businesses. Like we have to be willing to educate ourselves outside of what we have been taught by the rest of society before we can understand what society really is, before we will ever get to the point to where we can build something successful.
Right.
The only reason why I have a $2 billion company now is because, yeah, but it's because I learned how society works. You have to learn how economics work. And we are literally taught like money is the root of all evil. It's something that people are taught. And it's like, no, debt is like the root of all evil. Being poor and not being able to help people is the root of all evil. Someone who goes to church will literally sit here and try to lecture me on what it is that I do for a living because I'm doing Satan's work or the devil's work by becoming wealthy. And my response to that is usually something like, some people have to go to church and donate $5. Someone has to build the churches. So while you keep going to the church and donating your $2 out of your pocket, I'll keep building the churches for you to go to. Now, now you have an understanding of how the world works. There's a reason why people bring up the 99% and the 1%. And it's not even 1%, it's a fraction of that. If you were to put 7 zeros behind it, it would be much closer. So we live in a world with about 8 billion people. So if you take those 8 billion people and then you say 9999999% of people work for whoever's left, then there's about, what's up, brother? Good, man. There's about 80,000 people left on the planet. So 8 billion people are working for 80,000 people.
Mm.
And it's not really, really hard to do that math. Whenever you even think about a billionaire, how many billionaires can you count on one hand? Can you count on two hands? Whenever you look at the Forbes list of the wealthiest people in the world, how many are there? And then on top of that, there are so few that we know their names. So if you take the top millionaires and then the billionaires and you put them together, there's anywhere between 50 to 80,000 on the planet right now. And then that right there are the people who provide the jobs. And you know, and you were even talking about taxes. Like people will literally get upset and say, oh, this billionaire is dodging their taxes. It's like, what? How are they dodging their taxes? Do you know how much taxes they're paying for you to be employed by them?
Yeah, people don't
That's what
understand that there's payroll taxes at all.
exactly. That's the taxes that they're paying. So yeah, it's great that they have the ability to write off business expenses and a second or a third home and company cars. But at the same time, you can do that too if you just take your time to stop believing that money is evil and then educate yourself on how to do it. Literally anybody on the planet can do this. Anybody can go down this same path. They just have to be willing to educate themselves outside of what they've been taught by society.
I think personally, the worst thing I did in my very early to now late early 20s, I went to college. I completely regret my decision. I let them yet again indoctrinate me by going to college because everyone tells you got to have a piece of paper, right? And when I came out, I couldn't find a job. This generation is so utterly angry that we all got into debt, that we all went to college, we did so-called the right thing by societal standards, and we can't pay bills. We are living at home. Most people have returned home because of the fact that rent is so high. Home ownership is fleeting because of the amount of homes being bought up by State Street, Vanguard, Rock, BlackRock. Single family homes are not allocable to the younger generation, and it feels like there's absolute desperation. Now, the current administration, the way it's working, I don't see it even improving one bit. This is not, I personally voted for Trump myself. This is not what I voted for. I didn't vote for my money to be allocated towards different countries to potentially start World War III with Venezuela. I didn't vote for consistent taxation. I voted for limited government, dismantle the IRS, look into the Department of Education. This is what I all voted for, and that's not what we're seeing. So everything that we voted for isn't being showed to us the way we want to.
Well, it's going to be really fun whenever in the next stage of this journey you are on, you realize that it doesn't matter who you vote for. The same thing is going to happen. The voting system that we have in place is just there to keep people like just to keep this people in society arguing with each other and
That's
picking a
exactly what
side.
it is because half of
But
our U.S. public officials are taking money from a Israel lobbyist group called APAC. And then when the people realize that, people start freaking out, being like, "Oh, we have to support Israel." No, that actually, no, we don't. And if people look into history correctly, they would also know that Israel doesn't allow any type of DNA sequencing or testing because of the fact that they would actually find out that none of them are actually belonging to Israel at all. They're all Eastern European Jewish individuals. So it's nothing against Israel. You have the right to exist, but you don't have the right to kill thousands of innocent children. That's what I'm simply saying. And that ties into business too. If we do not have the funds to lower the national debt, also it also increases inflation, which also means things get more expensive. People don't have jobs. People are not being given what they voted for. That's why everyone is completely, utterly pissed off in this country.
you brought up homes, the housing market, and It's a discussion that I was having last week. We were talking about all these fix and flip TV shows that started coming on TV in the last 10 or 12 years.
Yeah.
And I spent a lot of time educating real estate investors on why they should invest in private software companies, why they should diversify into brands like Smarter Holdings. Because on paper, it might look like you are making money when you're investing in real estate or the stock market or oil and gas, but it doesn't matter when you back out, then everybody's making 6 to 8%, maybe 9 or 10% at the highest. But when you adjust for inflation, you're not even making that. It's only in software, which is what has propped up our GDP for the last 20 years, that you can make huge amounts of returns, in the 10 times, the 20 times, the 200 times, the 500 times returns, like we were seeing with cryptocurrency before it became
Right.
regulated. But the same thing is happening with AI now. And it always fascinates me that a real estate investor will spend all kinds of time looking for an app or a website that they can use to try to increase their revenue in their fixing or flipping or their home rentals, but they never think to invest in the software themselves. They have a phone full of apps and they're not taking the time to look at investing in those apps. And when you think about the housing crisis that we're in right now, what a lot of Americans don't understand is we are actively responsible for the housing crisis, because as soon as all these fix and flip shows came on, a big chunk of society decided that they wanted to go out and do fixing and flipping and call themselves investors, real estate investors. And what they're not understanding is when you take, we have this apartment in Dallas that we really just use to run servers out of. And then I have an apartment in Frisco that I don't use to run servers out of. But you take an apartment complex, your average apartment complex, and let's just say it's worth $5 million. According to rent rolls, the market that's around, the comps on the other apartment complexes in the area. And then you have a company come through and they install smart thermostats in every one of the units. And then they change the valuation of the apartment complex. And they say, our apartments are different and better because you have a smart thermostat. And our value on this apartment complex was $5 million just last week. And now, since we installed $200,000 worth of smart thermostats, we're saying the value of the apartment complex is $8 million. So they have to make adjustments in the rent to account for the new increase in valuation. And then they'll come through and they'll say, oh, well, we're going to paint the apartments. We're going to put granite countertops in the apartment. And within a year, that $5 million apartment complex becomes a $15 million apartment complex. What is going to happen to the rent? The rent has to increase to make up for the change in valuation. The problem is the same people who are complaining about the value of their houses, their property taxes going up, the same people who are complaining about their rent going up are investing in real estate. So we are part of that problem. We can't all be fixers and flippers. And a lot of people don't understand that the reason why the government rewards people for fixing and flipping, or they reward people for real estate investing, is because they don't have the bandwidth to do it themselves. So when you look at two primary sources of revenue that people use for passive investing, you have real estate investing and you have oil and gas. Why does the government offer so many incentives for those? Because the government doesn't have the bandwidth to pump oil and gas, and they don't have the bandwidth to put in new countertops and fix roofs and paint houses. So they reward people by way of tax deductions, tax incentives, and a little bit of a modest return on what they're doing to go out and do it for them. And then the flip side of that is you have the stock market, which is mostly propped up by software companies. But on paper, who's allowed to invest in software companies? Mostly accredited investors. So you have to make a minimum of $1 million a year in revenue or have a minimum of $2 to $5 million in assets in order to be able to invest in a private software company. So in essence, you're making the rich richer by only allowing wealthy people access to be able to invest in the companies that would give a person the highest amount of returns.
I think that you're right about that. I didn't think about it like that. Why rent has increased. Now, this is a poor person ideology. You are going to blame the increase on rent, the increase on food, because of the illegal migration of illegals during the Biden administration. Okay, that's a part of it. I'm not saying that's not a part of it. It's totally a part of it because now you have more mouths to feed. There's less allocable inventory to give out to Americans. However, you're absolutely right. People are in demand. They are asking for premium apartments, luxury countertops. They're asking for beautiful, walk-in showers in the apartments. Those are expensive to build. You're asking for a washer and dryer in units, which are expensive, and all these things involved with it. And then they don't take in consideration, like, I don't know why I'm paying $1,500 for an apartment. Do I think that's grossly overestimated? Absolutely. But considering the fact that you're putting in premium amenities, which you are already asking for, you kind of can't bitch.
Right. Yeah, there are plenty of apartment complexes out there that don't have luxury in their name. So it's like that fallacy, or I mean, it's not even a fallacy, it's a principle that we vote first with the dollars that we spend. If people were willing to move into older apartment complexes that didn't have all those amenities, then they wouldn't be building high-end luxury apartment complexes. But our generation, my generation, the millennials, and the generations that are coming out, where everybody's about show and tell. Everybody wants the nicest things. They want to go into debt so that they can have a nice car. They want to struggle to pay rent so that they can live in a quote unquote luxury apartment complex. But they're voting for that with their dollars. It is their, not, I'm not necessarily saying fault, but it is their choice on where they live. Because if you're complaining about, well, I have to make 3 times the rent to live wherever, well, there's plenty of $800 apartment complexes right down the street. You just might not, and not all of them have crime, Like a lot of people will say something about the criminal element that's there. There's not crime everywhere. There are cheaper complexes that aren't as nice because they were built in the 50s or the 60s or 70s. They weren't built 5 or 10 years ago with all the luxury amenities and having the elevator and everything like that. So if you're choosing to live in a $2,000 apartment when an $800 a month apartment could suffice, I don't think that you have the right to bitch about rent being too high because you're making the choice to do it.
I can't necessarily say that I disagree with you. I think you're right. My generation is very hyper focused on what they have versus what they're investing in. My generation is, and that's why I said I think the Department of Education needs to mandate financial education, investing, how the actual GDP works, how the stock market works, how to trade Forex. If I was president of the United States, I was actually having a conversation with my mom about this. I was like, the first thing I would do is I would implement business education into grade school, middle school, and high school. Now, that's not going to go well because, as you said, J.D. Rockefeller made sure that he crafted the U.S. modern education system to basically make slaves out of all of us. And God forbid you think any different, right? So that's what I would do if I was president. I would definitely implement financial education into the modern day education system.
The only way that that's going to be implemented, to be honest, is if someone with a private company decides to do it. Like, that's just the world that we live in. Because, like I was saying, I mean, like, we can point fingers at whatever administration did whatever the entire time, but the same people that we're talking about, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, they're the ones pulling the strings. The government is the entity that's there for people, the public facing entity that's there for people to argue with each other with, to keep us divided. It doesn't matter who's in office, the same thing is going to happen. It's just going to happen underneath the name of a Republican or underneath the name of a Democrat, so that we have the right and the ability to say, you're right, I'm wrong, I'm right, you're wrong. And that keeps that division in between us, which is one of the ultimate goals behind the people that are in charge right now. They don't want us working together. So it's never going to be about the administration. It's going to be about the flow of money. And even when I wrote my first book, Trainer to Trillionaire, and I said that one day I was going to create $1 trillion company, I wrote that book 13 years ago. There was no $1 trillion company on the planet at the time. And I said that I was going to create one. And I had no idea how I was going to do it. I just kept following the path that God put me on. And about 2 years ago, maybe three, NVIDIA became the world's first $1 trillion company. And then Apple became $1 trillion company. And
I
I
believe
looked
Tesla
at the
did as well.
markets. Yes, and I looked at the markets that they serve. And when you look at the market compared to the population, they serve a very small market. Only 5 to 10% of the world has adopted AI or the need for GPUs, which is what controls AI and which is what controlled cryptocurrency. Apple is not the largest cell phone manufacturer.
No, it's
They don't have
Samsung.
they don't have the largest market out there as far as customers. And then Tesla is a very, very small car company whenever you compare them to a Toyota or a Ford. But why is Tesla doing so well as opposed to these car companies that have been around for years? Because Tesla is a software company. They
Yes, it
just happen
is.
to be cars. So when you look at the markets that are being served by $1 trillion companies, they are very small markets. And I was at my storage unit. I was moving stuff from other apartments that we had around the United States. And I was moving stuff into my storage. And I just thought of this. And I was like, who do I serve? I serve small business. And small business is over 90% of the businesses that are in America. And one of the things that I always think about is, if I were to ask anyone, what is the one company that can make a small business successful? There is no answer for it, because there is no education or active mentorship or leadership or infrastructure in place to tell people this is exactly how you build a small business and this is how you make it successful. And it was on that day, I mean, it's something that I had decided before, but it was on that day that I really realized I can create $1 trillion company by being the company that serves small business owners and educates them and provides the infrastructure and the leadership and the mentorship and the sales and the training and everything in order for them to be successful. And if I'm able to serve that market, well, all of a sudden I'm serving the largest market on the planet whenever it comes to where are physical dollars going from adults that have the ability to work or start small businesses. And so when I thought of that, I was like, that's my path to $1 trillion company. But even then, that was still 2 or 3 years ago. And Smarter was worth maybe 80 to $100 million at the time. And we had a couple of really good pieces of software that allowed our valuation to be at that. But then I started training this AI in 2023. And then it was earlier this year whenever I decided I was building this AI to help us internally run all of our companies, Smarter Commerce, Smarter Marketing, help us with our blogging, help us with the servers, the infrastructure, everything that we have. And it wasn't until the beginning of this year where I realized, holy cow, if Riker, my AI, is helping us internally run all of our companies, then Riker can run all of our companies for customers. And so that's when I started actually building Dominate.ai and building Riker as a consumer-facing product that would help them build their small businesses. And then even whenever I was in the hospital, I was offered $1.6 billion to buy out Dominate before the product even launched. But the thing is they wanted to buy me out of my company. They wanted to take complete control and just have me be like this small partner inside the entity. And I wasn't willing to do that. But it's funny because I started on this path 13 years ago saying I was going to create $1 trillion company. I had no idea how I was going to do it. And now 13 years later, not only do we have in our projections that within the next 3 years, we'll be at $500 billion in revenue. Well, at year number 4, we're at $800 billion in revenue. So somewhere along the next 3 or 4 years, we are going to be making upwards of $1 trillion in revenue as long as we keep growing our businesses. Now, the reason why I'm even bringing that up is because this radio show that I was on yesterday, we were talking about sometimes you need to pivot. Sometimes you need to change. But what you can't do is give up. And one of the main reasons that small business owners are not successful, one of the main reasons why so many people are broke and angry, one of the main reasons why people don't get ahead is because people tend to make a decision to do something differently with their lives when they are in a heightened state of emotion. There will be a breakup. There will be a divorce. Somebody passes away. A house starts on fire. Something happens to them, which is the catalyst for them to make the decision to make a change. The issue happens when they don't follow through, because that moment of motivation or inspiration that someone has is fleeting. It's temporary. If you do not put systems in place, if you do not hire a coach or a mentor to go to the gym or help you with your business, if you don't start putting processes in place that would help you make real habits out of these new things that you're going after, you're more than likely going to give up once you hit a wall or things become difficult. That's the reason why people stop going to the gym. It's the reason why people stop working on their business. It's the reason why people stop pursuing a relationship where they hit some kind of like mishap that happens or some kind of miscommunication that happens, and they look at what's happening right now versus their past experiences, and then they tell themselves, this is just like that thing, that negative thing that happened to me before, and they choose to give up. And one of the things that I really, really came to terms with in the last few months after my 3-month hospitalization is I need to be proud of myself for not giving up. In the last 13 years of being on this journey, I could have at any time thrown in the towel, because getting to the point to where we are now was the most difficult, most stressful thing that I have ever done in my life. Raising my daughter on my own, building a successful family, going through 3 different surgeries and a subdural hematoma when my brain started bleeding. Like all of these things were easy in comparison to going from an idea that I'm going to build $1 trillion company to getting to this point 13 years later where we actually have a pro forma that puts us at being $1 trillion company within the next couple of years. You cannot give up. And that right there is the thing that stops people from being successful is making a decision and then not following through on the decision. And it doesn't have anything to do with the government. It doesn't have anything to do with any administration. It doesn't have anything to do with our exes that hurt our feelings. It doesn't have anything to do with the emotional trauma that we all went through when we were kids. It has to do with the fact that most people will have a dream or a vision and they give up on it. And if you give up on it, that's the only way that you can guarantee that you won't be successful. You don't have to have all the answers right now. You just have to be willing to seek out the answers. And if you're willing to follow through and seek out those answers and ask the right questions and go and go and go and just keep fucking going, then you will eventually reach your goal, no matter how big that goal is. And something you and I talked about on Friday, Sarah, is the bigger goal that you have, the easier it is to obtain it. Because if the world really is a pyramid, then 99% of the population is at the bottom of that pyramid fighting for a $50,000 to $100,000 a year job. Once
Yep.
you get to the next level and you're at $1 million a year, there's a whole lot less people going for that goal. Once you get to the next level and you're at 100 million to $1 billion a year, there's a lot less people going after that goal. The bigger your goal is, the higher that pyramid is for you, the easier it is to reach from the perspective of competition. The hard part is it doesn't have anything to do with the outside world. It has to do with you changing yourself, you building a character, an archetype that has the ability to understand, maintain, manage, and control that kind of money. So when I sit here and I say something like, we have a company that's giving us $250 million, they're not giving $250 million to a person who just watched an episode of Shark Tank, who wrote an idea on a piece of paper and then immediately started going out and looking for investors. They are talking to someone, they are giving that funding to a person that built a huge team of people that built profitable and promising companies that have the ability to utilize that kind of funding. That money is not a prize. It is a tool that can be used to scale those companies. So until someone gets to the point to where they understand scalability, to where they understand how to take a dollar and turn it into $10, they are unfortunately never going to see that kind of money. It just can't happen. And they might not be successful at fulfilling their goals. So, like I was saying when we first got on this call, even this path that you are on right now, that's where it all starts. It all starts by looking at the world that we are living in and then asking the right questions and saying, why does this person or this group of people have these things that I would like to have for myself? And then you go out and you start finding the answers. And once you start finding the answers, you become a completely different person.
1,000%. I've learned more in almost 2 years than this bullshit education system that we have in this country could ever teach me. And I think that's why a lot of young Americans my age are saying, yeah, school isn't it. We're going to invest in mentorship. Even you see more kids opting out of education in general. People will leave high school with no high school education. They're like, I would rather talk to millionaires and learn more from them because none of you teaching me drive a car better than a Hyundai, right? Like that's not a dig at anyone, but the modern education system isn't teaching you how to become successful. It's teaching you how to become a slave and have a slave mind. Period.
Yeah, this we had Family Guy on the TV the other day, and someone was trying to give Brian financial advice, and Brian said, "Yes, please tell me what tan-colored $500 car you're driving right now." And it was just funny the way that he said it because you're exactly right. Like there are two different types of people that seek me out to hire me. There are companies that see that a retainer for me would cost them a minimum to 10 to 15,000, $25,000 a month to retain me to help their business. And then
Mhm.
there are people that see those exact same prices and they go, "Oh, this guy is a scam." So a company will call me a consultant, but a broke person will call me a scam artist. There is no difference in what it is that I provide. The difference is the perspective from who's looking at what it is that I do. And you're exactly right. Like people should be, there should be an option. If there are student loans, there should be mentor loans. If somebody is going to make the choice to go into debt in order to get educated for the next part of their life, then they should have a choice in that it doesn't have to be a college. I can take that same $5,000 to $10,000 a year and I can utilize that towards active mentorship within companies or people that have become successful. Now that we talk about that, I'm going to find a company that allows people to finance that. That's absolutely amazing. Genius, Jason and Sarah. What a great idea. This is going to be a business now.
Listen, that's all I'm saying is like I've learned more from people like yourself, billionaires and millionaires over the last 2 years talking, and you're not the first billionaire I've talked to. I talked to a billionaire when I used to live in Miami in the summer of 2024 too. And all I have learned is saying is one thing from the most successful individuals on the face of the planet is school is a literal scam. They want you indoctrinated to be a pawn. That's it. I learned copywriting through Andrew Tate's school. People are not going to like that because of the fact that they think Andrew Tate's a scam artist, that he's a misogynist, he's this, he's that. No, he's none of those things. What he is an incredibly successful individual that knows what the fuck he's talking about, period.
Yeah. I mean, and then everybody has their own audience. Like Andrew Tate has his own audience. I have my own audience. And every millionaire or billionaire or successful person that's out there can take on that role of mentoring others. And they can set whatever price that they want for that education and that mentorship. What it really comes down to is who's willing to pay for it. But the thing is we live in this society because of shows like Shark Tank and whatever other shows that are out there. People see people see investors fighting over writing a check. But what they don't see is the years of bullshit that that person went through to be able to even be qualified to stand in front of the sharks.
Right.
So the sharks aren't writing checks for an idea that you scratched on a paper towel while you were living with mommy. They are writing checks to companies that have exhausted their credit, they've second mortgaged their homes, but they have a path to scalable revenue. And that's when the check is written. And so one of the things that I deal with a lot just from running an investment firm is expectation. I have people that tell me, "Well, I thought you were an investor. Why aren't you investing in my company? You should be investing in my idea." And I say to a lot of people, "Well, I am an investor. I'm just not your investor." Or what it is that you're wanting me to invest in doesn't fit within the criteria of our PPM. And then they go, what's a PPM? And I'm like, man, if you don't even know what PPM stands for, private placement memorandum, by the way, to the audience, if you don't know what that stands, then you're so far out of touch with what it is that you're trying to do anyway, because that person that's out there trying to seek the investment that would ask me a question as ludicrous as what's a PPM, they shouldn't even be asking for an investment if they don't have a PPM themselves. There are so many people that want that $1 million check, but they have zero discernible idea for how they would ever pay someone revenue on that $1 million check. They're not understanding that investors do not write checks to people who need their money. They write checks to people who can use their money. So when I started on this path, I would talk to investors for $5,000 or $10,000 because we needed funds to build what it is that we were trying to build. And everybody will eventually start on that path. But now we're at this point where we have capital groups offering us tens to hundreds of millions of dollars at a time. And we have the choice to accept or reject that funding based off of whatever terms that we can or cannot agree upon. So I went from that same starting point where I didn't know what a PPM was. I didn't know what terms and conditions were. I knew nothing about trying to sell a product and putting a data use policy or a refund policy in place. At one point, I didn't have a website. At one point, I never had an app. It all started with me going out and getting that necessary education and surrounding myself with people and mentors that could help me grow to the point to where I am now. And from the inside looking out, my life is the same, but everything flipped at one point on this journey. I went from looking for $20,000 to turning down $200,000. I went from asking people if they would be willing to invest in our company, invest any amount that they could afford, to saying, we don't really need your $100 million right now. We don't, not only do we, it's not that we don't have the use for it necessarily, it's that we're not coming to terms and agreements on where it is, how it is that you want us to spend that money, or what it is that you want in return for that money. So like I was saying, anybody can get to this point, but you have to get out of that survival mode, because nobody's offering anyone $100 million if they need the money. In actuality, the reason why a capital firm would be offering you $100 million is because they need you to take their money. And that right there is like so unfathomable to people, that these investors or this wealthy person is sitting here on top of a huge clump of cash and they are not making good returns on it. So they are seeking out brands and companies to utilize their capital to make those returns. It is so weird to people to really think about that. The people that are ready to invest in your company are looking for you. It's not the other way around. They are waiting for a Forbes article to come out about you. They are waiting for a podcast to talk about you. They are waiting for some third party to validate what it is that your brand does, so that they can seek you out and ask you, can you pretty please take $50 million of ours and then give us back $65 million a year from now. They are looking for it. And that right there is the paradigm shift that most people haven't taken the time to understand. If you are looking for money, then you are never going to find it. You have to build the infrastructure that makes people with money look for you.
I actually think it goes a little bit deeper than that. I mean, fuck Forbes and being on a podcast. It's about your energy too. If your energy screams broke, you'll never make money. Period.
Yeah.
Period. Like you have to actually work on yourself to even be able to attract an individual like yourself. There's no like I've always been somebody that people have invested into. I'm not entirely sure why. I've always just been myself, but I feel like a lot of people they're like, "Fuck, this kid is a little bit different. This kid is worth investing into." Why? Probably because I speak my mind and I also am fucking intelligent. But also at the same time, multi millionaires and billionaires are not going to talk to someone that's not on their fucking level though. That's just a fact. Who the fuck is going to go talk to a dumbass individual? I'm sorry. Sorry, man.
No, you're right. And that's what I was saying earlier is this path has nothing to do with the external world. It has to do with who you make the decision to become. And the most successful people on the planet are people that worked really hard on becoming themselves. Michael Jackson was really good at being Michael Jackson. Will Smith, Tom Cruise, they are really good at being themselves. Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Donald Trump, they are really good at being themselves. They don't try to fit in some kind of mold of someone else. They don't compartmentalize themselves in order to impress others. They are who they are. And me, that is exactly why I am where I am in my life, is because I decided a couple of decades ago that, when I was in my early 20s, I was still trying to figure out where it was that I belonged in the world. And I think whenever people are going through their teenage years, that's when they're on that path to discovery. But depending on how much you struggled in your kid years, your adolescence, your teenage years, that's going to have a lot of factor on who it is that you ultimately become in your 20s. And after being in bad relationships and getting fucked over by business partners and all this in my late teens and early 20s, I decided, you know what? Fuck this. I'm just going to be myself. And if people don't like me, then I don't care. If people don't see eye to eye to me, if they don't get along with me, if they tell me I'm too much for them, I don't care, because I am not going to lower my own energy to make someone happy. And from the moment I decided to just be myself, that's when the path to success started. And even to this day, I will never change who I am. You and I were even talking about it. I wish that I had it on. It's in my nightstand. I have a ring that says fuck you on it that I wear whenever I put on certain suits. And the main reason is because I look so good in my suit. I got on the nice belt. I got on the nice shirt. I got on the amazing jacket that stands out. I'm wearing a tie that stands out. I got the shoes. I got the socks. And people are sitting there and they're like, this dude just got out of a Porsche that has gold letters with his name on it that says that he runs an investment firm. And then I go to give him a handshake and I got that big ass fuck you ring on. And the reason is because I am never going to stop being myself. And that fuck you is me saying fuck you to anybody in society who wants me to change in order to make them comfortable. I
That's
don't care.
exactly why I built this podcast because this podcast isn't going to solely be about interviewing incredible business owners like yourself. It's going to be about geopolitical business, what's going on with marketing, some innovationary methodologies that business owners can actually use to that's applicable within their businesses. I am not going to lessen myself in or what I believe in for the comfort of everyone fucking else. And I don't care how young I am or how threatened you are by me. Call me fucking angry, call me upset, call me disruptive, call me rude. Fuck you too, pal. Okay, period.
Right.
And I'll
All
see
right, Sarah.
you when I'm sitting in my fucking Lamborghini.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and the people that aren't willing to accept that are the people that are going, yes, sir, yes, ma'am. There's nothing wrong with saying yes, sir, and yes, ma'am. What's wrong is saying yes, sir, and yes, ma'am, and demeaning yourself and not being the best you that you can be just so you can appease other people. And that's what keeps people stuck in jobs. That's what keeps people from becoming successful. Sarah, we have hit our hour. I want to talk to you again ASAP. I have a lunch to get to.
All right, my man. Sounds great to me. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
I'll talk to you soon.
All right, my man. Bye.